She bit through the leather strap to keep from screaming as her daughter came into the world on a frozen dirt floor. Blood pooled beneath her, mixing with the straw and manure of a livestock pen, while men outside argued over her price. 19 years old, sold 3 times before, and now they'd auction her off before the cord was even cut. But when a gray-eyed stranger paid $300 and whispered, "You belong to no one now," she didn't know whether to believe him or run. Stay until the end and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The contractions had started at dawn. By noon, Eleanor Callahan couldn't stand anymore. She'd collapsed against the rough wooden slats of the livestock pen, her wrists still shackled to the iron ring above her head, her body curving around the agony tearing through her middle. "Get up." The overseer's boot connected with her hip. "Buyers are coming." Ellie didn't respond. Couldn't. Another wave of pain crashed through her, and she clenched her teeth so hard she tasted blood. "I said get up, breeder." "She's in labor, you damn fool." A woman's voice, tired and hollow, came from somewhere nearby. "Baby's coming whether you like it or not." The overseer, a thick-necked man named Harlan, spat tobacco juice into the straw. "Then get it out of her. Auction starts in 2 hours." Ellie heard his boots crunch away through the frozen mud. She pressed her forehead against the cold wooden slat and tried to breathe. The chains bit into her wrists every time she moved, the metal burning against her raw skin. "Hey," the woman's voice again, closer now. "Hey girl, look at me." Ellie forced her eyes open. An older woman crouched before her, gray-haired and thin, with the hollow cheeks of someone who'd stopped hoping long ago. "How far apart are the pains?" "I don't know." Ellie's voice came out broken. "Close, too close." "First baby?" "Yes." The woman's expression flickered with something that might have been pity. "It's going to hurt. A lot. But you got to stay quiet, understand? You scream, they'll gag you. And trust me, you don't want that." Ellie nodded, tears streaming down her frozen cheeks. "What's your name, girl?" "Eleanor." "Ellie." "I'm Martha." The older woman pulled a tattered shawl from her own shoulders and tucked it around Ellie's trembling body. "I've delivered babies before. I'll help you. But you got to do exactly what I say." Another contraction hit, and Ellie bit down on her own fist, swallowing the scream that clawed at her throat. The pain was blinding, all-consuming, like being torn apart from the inside. "That's it." Martha's hands were gentle on her belly. "Good girl. Breathe through it." "I can't do this," Ellie gasped. "I can't. Not here. Not like this." "You don't have a choice, child. That baby's coming, whether you're ready or not." The hours that followed blurred into a haze of agony. Ellie lost track of time, lost track of everything except the waves of pain and Martha's steady voice guiding her through. The winter wind howled outside, driving snow through the gaps in the wooden walls. Her fingers went numb. Her lips turned blue, but still the baby came. "Push now," Martha commanded. "Push hard." Ellie bore down with everything she had, left her body arching against the chains, her scream finally escaping, despite her best efforts. And then a cry. Thin, furious, alive. "It's a girl." Martha's voice caught. "You got a baby girl, Ellie?" The sound of her daughter's first breath cut through Ellie's exhaustion, like sunlight through storm clouds. She reached for the baby, but the chains pulled tight, keeping her arms suspended above her head. "Please." The word tore from her throat. "Please, let me hold her." Martha looked up at the chains, then at the door, then back at Ellie. Her jaw tightened with anger and helplessness. "I can put her on your chest, but I can't unlock those." She laid the baby against Ellie's body skin, to skin beneath the shawl. The infant was slick with birth, impossibly small, her face scrunched and red. But she was alive. She was breathing. She was real. "Hey," Ellie whispered, her voice breaking. "Hey, little one. I'm here. I'm right here." The baby rooted against her, seeking warmth, seeking safety. Ellie pressed her lips to the tiny head, breathing in the scent of new life, and felt something crack open in her chest. Love. Pure, overwhelming, terrifying love. "I won't let them take you," she murmured against her daughter's soft hair. "I won't. I promise." But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. She had no power here. She was property same as this child. Tomorrow or the next day they'd be separated, sold to different owners. She'd never see her daughter again. The thought made her want to die. "Ellie!" Martha's voice was urgent. "Someone's coming." The door crashed open and Harlan strode in, his face twisted with irritation. "Auction's starting early. Buyers are getting restless." His eyes fell on the baby and narrowed. "She alive?" "Yes." Martha positioned herself between Harlan and Ellie. "They both need rest. The girl lost a lot of blood." "Don't care." Harlan pulled out a key and approached the chains. "She goes on the block in 10 minutes. Clean her up. She can barely stand. Then she'll sit." He unlocked one wrist, then the other, letting Ellie collapse forward. "You got 10 minutes. Make her presentable." He left the door swinging open behind him. Cold wind rushed in, carrying snowflakes that settled on the straw like tiny frozen stars. Martha helped Ellie sit up, supporting her weight when she swayed. "Can you hold the baby?" "I won't let her go." "Good. Keep her warm. Keep her close." Martha's eyes were bright with tears she refused to shed. "And Ellie, listen to me. Whoever buys you, whatever happens, you survive. You hear me? You do whatever you have to do to stay alive." "What's the point?" Ellie's voice was hollow. "They're going to take her from me anyway. You don't know that. I've seen it happen. They sell the babies separate. Better price that way." Martha had no answer for that. Because they both knew it was true. The auction yard was chaos. Torches sputtered in the wind, casting dancing shadows across the snow. Men crowded around a raised wooden platform, their breath fogging in the freezing air, their voices loud with liquor and anticipation. The smell of horses and tobacco and unwashed bodies hung thick despite the cold. Ellie stood shivering in a line of women, her daughter pressed against her chest beneath the thin shawl. Her legs could barely hold her. Blood still trickled down her inner thighs, staining the snow pink where she stood. Lot 14. Young female. Irish stock. 21 years old. The auctioneer's voice boomed across the yard. "Pretty thing when she's cleaned up. Good teeth. Proven fertile." A woman was dragged onto the platform. Ellie recognized her from the holding pen. She'd been crying all night. "Starting bid. $100. The numbers climbed. The woman was sold for $160 to a fat man with a gold watch chain. She screamed when they pulled her away. "Lot 15. Another woman. Another sale. "Lot 16. The line moved forward. Ellie clutched her baby tighter, her heart hammering against her ribs. The infant had fallen asleep exhausted from the ordeal of being born into this nightmare. She was so small, so fragile, so completely dependent on a mother who had no power to protect her. "Please," Ellie whispered, not sure who she was praying to. "Please, if anyone's listening, please help us." No one answered. "Lot 17. The auctioneer gestured toward her. "Step up, girl." Hands grabbed her arms, shoving her toward the platform. She stumbled on the frozen steps, nearly falling, and only pure desperation kept her from dropping her daughter. "Careful with the merchandise." The auctioneer yanked her upright and positioned her at the front of the platform. "Gentlemen, feast your eyes." The crowd pressed closer. Dozens of faces stared up at her, ruddy and eager and hungry. She saw them looking at her body, calculating her worth, measuring her like livestock. 19 years old, the auctioneer announced. "Healthy female. And look here, she comes with a bonus." He grabbed the shawl and pulled it aside, revealing the sleeping baby. "Fresh newborn, born just hours ago. Mother and daughter available as a set, or separate if you prefer." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone laughed. "Starting bid for the pair. $200. A voice from the back. 200. 220. 240. Ellie stared straight ahead, her vision blurring. The voices blended into a roar. She felt her daughter stir against her chest and tightened her arms instinctively. 260. 280. I want just the girl. A man pushed forward through the crowd. He was young, maybe 30, with cruel eyes and a smirk that made Ellie's skin crawl. Leave the brat. I got no use for a squalling infant. 300 for the female alone. The auctioneer nodded approvingly. Do I hear 320 for the pair? Come on, gentlemen, 2 for the price of. 300 for both. A new voice cut through the noise, low calm carrying despite its quietness. The crowd parted. A man stepped forward. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat and a wide-brimmed hat, pulled low against the snow. His face was weathered by sun and wind, older than the others, maybe mid-30s, with a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite. But his eyes were the color of winter sky, pale gray, sharp, unreadable. They swept over the platform, over the auctioneer, over the leering crowd, and finally settled on Ellie. She couldn't look away. 300 for both, he repeated. Cash. Now hold on. The young man with cruel eyes stepped forward. I bid 300 first. For one, I'm buying both. The hell you are. I want the girl. Then you should have bid faster. The gray-eyed stranger didn't raise his voice, but something in his tone made the other man take a step back. 300, both. Final offer. The auctioneer looked between them, sensing potential profit. 320 for just the female going once. No one spoke. Going twice. Silence. Sold. The gavel cracked like a gunshot. To the gentleman in the black coat. 300 for the pair. The crowd grumbled and began to disperse. The young man with cruel eyes shot a poisonous look at the stranger before stalking away into the snow. Ellie stood frozen on the platform, her legs shaking, her arms locked around her baby. The stranger approached, his boots crunching through the frozen mud. He stopped at the base of the steps and looked up at her. Can you walk? His voice was quiet, not demanding, asking. Ellie nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. Then come down. Careful on the ice. He didn't reach for her, didn't grab her arm or pull her along like property. He just waited, his pale eyes patient, while she navigated the icy steps on trembling legs. When she reached the bottom, she swayed. The world tilted sideways. She was going to fall. A hand caught her elbow, steady, firm, but not rough. Easy. I've got you. She looked up at him, this stranger who'd just spent $300 to own her and her daughter. $300 was a fortune, more than most people saw in a year. What did he want? What would he demand in return? Why? The words scraped out of her raw throat. The stranger released her elbow and stepped back, giving her space. Let's get you somewhere warm first. Questions can wait. He turned and walked toward the edge of the yard, where a wagon waited in the shadows. He didn't look back to see if she was following, didn't threaten or command. He just walked. And Ellie, with no other choice and nowhere else to go, followed. The wagon ride lasted forever. Or maybe it only felt that way because Ellie couldn't stop shivering. The stranger had given her a thick wool blanket from the back of the wagon, wrapping it around her and the baby without comment. But the cold had sunk into her bones, and no amount of wool could warm the ice in her blood. She sat on the hard wooden bench, clutching her daughter, watching the stranger's broad back as he drove the horses through the snow. He hadn't spoken since leaving the auction yard, hadn't explained where they were going or what he planned to do with her. The silence should have been terrifying. Instead, it was almost peaceful. No one yelling at her, no one calling her names, no one grabbing at her body or making threats. Just the creak of the wagon wheels, the rhythm of the horses' hooves, and the endless white landscape stretching out in every direction. Her daughter stirred, making soft, hungry sounds. She needs to feed, Ellie said. Her voice sounded strange after so long silent. The stranger glanced back over his shoulder. We're almost there. 5 more minutes. True to his word, the wagon turned off the main road onto a narrow path that wound through tall pine trees. Through the branches, Ellie glimpsed a cabin. small but sturdy looking, with smoke rising from a stone chimney. The stranger pulled the wagon to a stop in front of a modest barn. "Wait here." He climbed down and disappeared inside. A few minutes later, he returned. "Barn's warm. Horses are settled. Let's get you inside." He came around to her side of the wagon and held out his hand. Ellie stared at it. Calloused, scarred, weathered by years of hard work. A rancher's hand. She'd been grabbed by so many hands in her life. Dragged, pushed, struck, violated. But this hand was simply offered, palm up, waiting. She took it. His grip was warm and steady as he helped her down from the wagon. Her legs buckled when her feet hit the frozen ground, and again he caught her, one hand on her arm, the other hovering near her back but not quite touching. "Inside," he said, "before you freeze." The cabin was small but clean. One main room with a bed in the corner, a wood stove crackling with heat, a table with 2 chairs. The air smelled of pine smoke and coffee, and after the bitter cold outside, it felt almost tropical. The stranger guided her to the bed and stepped back. "Sit. I'll get water and food." Ellie sank onto the mattress, still clutching her baby. The bed was soft. Impossibly soft after weeks of sleeping on hard ground. She wanted to cry at the simple luxury of it. The stranger moved around the cabin with quiet efficiency. He stoked the fire-heated water, sliced bread and cheese onto a plate. His movements were unhurried but purposeful, like a man who'd lived alone for a long time and learned to need no one. Finally, he brought the plate to her and set it on the small table beside the bed. "Eat. You need your strength." "I need to feed her first." Ellie looked down at her daughter, who was beginning to fuss. "She hasn't eaten since she was born." The stranger nodded and turned away, giving her privacy. Ellie adjusted her position, wincing at the soreness between her legs, and helped the baby find her breast. The infant latched on immediately, her tiny mouth working with fierce determination. "That's it," Ellie whispered. "That's my girl." For a few minutes, the only sounds were the crackle of the fire and the soft suckling of the baby. Ellie felt some of the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. Her daughter was feeding. They were warm. They were safe. For now. "What's your name?" The stranger's voice made her jump. He was sitting at the table now, a cup of coffee in his hands, his pale eyes watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "Eleanor," she said carefully. "Eleanor Callahan. People call me Ellie." "Ellie," he repeated as if testing the weight of it. "I'm Samuel Thornton. Most folks call me Sam." "Where are we? What is this place?" "My ranch, about 15 miles north of town." He took a slow sip of coffee. 200 acres, mostly cattle. I built this cabin myself when I first settled here." "Why did you buy me?" The question hung in the air between them. Sam set down his cup and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Because nobody should be sold." His voice was flat matter-of-fact. Especially not a woman who just gave birth. "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I've got." Ellie stared at him, searching for the lie, the angle, the hidden cruelty. Men didn't spend $300 out of kindness. Men didn't bring women home and ask for nothing. There was always a price. Always. "What do you want from me?" Sam held her gaze steadily. "Nothing." "I don't believe you." "I know." He stood and crossed to the stove, pouring more coffee. "I don't expect you to. Not yet. Maybe not ever." He turned back to face her. "But here's what's going to happen. You're going to rest. You're going to heal. You're going to take care of that baby. And when you're strong enough, we'll figure out what comes next." "What does what comes next mean?" "It means whatever you want it to mean." Sam's expression didn't change. "You can stay here, work on the ranch if you want. Or I can take you to the next town, help you find work, set you up somewhere safe. Your choice." "My choice." Ellie laughed bitterly. "I haven't had a choice in 5 years. You do now." She wanted to argue, wanted to scream that he was lying, that there was always a catch, that kindness didn't exist in her world. But she was so tired, so empty, so broken. The baby finished feeding and fell asleep against her chest. Ellie looked down at that tiny face, those perfect little features, and felt her heart crack open all over again. "What happens to her?" she whispered. "If I leave, what happens to my daughter?" "She goes with you. She's yours." "But you paid for her. You paid for both of us." Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed the room and crouched down in front of her, his pale eyes level with hers. "I paid to get you out of that yard," he said quietly. "I didn't pay to own you. There's a difference." Ellie felt tears burning in her eyes. "I don't understand." "I know." He stood and moved toward the door, grabbing his coat from the hook. "I'm going to check on the horses. Settle in. Rest. The bed's yours." "Where will you sleep?" "Got a bedroll by the stove. I've slept worse places." He opened the door, letting in a rush of cold air. "Sam." He paused, looking back. "Thank you." The words came out barely a whisper. "For what you did. Even if I don't understand it, thank you." Something flickered across his face. Something that might have been sadness or understanding or old pain barely healed. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "Just rest. We'll talk more tomorrow." Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, leaving Ellie alone with her sleeping daughter and a warmth she hadn't felt in years. She looked around the small cabin, at the clean blankets on the bed, at the fire crackling in the stove, at the food waiting on the table. This isn't real, she told herself. It can't be real. Something will go wrong. Something always goes wrong. But her body was too exhausted to fight anymore. She lay back against the pillows curling around her daughter and closed her eyes. For the first time in 5 years, she slept without nightmares. Ellie woke to the smell of bacon. For a moment she didn't know where she was. The softness beneath her was wrong. The warmth was wrong. Everything was wrong. Then the memories came flooding back. The auction, the stranger, the cabin, Sam. She sat up slowly, wincing at the soreness that seemed to radiate from every part of her body. Her daughter was still asleep in the crook of her arm, breathing peacefully, her tiny fist curled against Ellie's chest. "Morning," Sam's voice came from across the room. He was at the stove, pushing something around in a skillet. "How do you feel?" "Like I got trampled by horses." "That's about right." He didn't turn around. "You lost a lot of blood. You'll be weak for a while." Ellie looked down at herself and realized she was wearing a clean nightgown. Not her own. Not the blood-stained dress she'd been wearing at the auction. Panic surged through her. "Who changed my clothes?" "You did." Sam glanced over his shoulder. "Last night. You don't remember." She searched her memory and found a hazy image of herself stumbling to a wash basin of clean water and clean cloth and the relief of being free of blood and filth. "I remember. Sort of. You were half asleep. I left clean clothes on the chair and waited outside until you were done." Ellie felt something loosen in her chest. He hadn't touched her, hadn't undressed her while she slept, hadn't taken advantage of her vulnerability. "The baby needs a name," Sam said, sliding bacon onto a plate. "Can't keep calling her the baby forever." "I haven't thought about it." "Take your time, but she should have something to be called." He brought the plate to her along with a cup of coffee that smelled like heaven. Ellie's stomach growled loudly, and she felt her face flush. "Eat," Sam said. "You need it." She ate. The bacon was crispy, the bread fresh, the coffee strong and hot. It was the best meal she'd had in years, maybe ever. She ate until the plate was empty, and then sat there still hungry, afraid to ask for more. Sam seemed to read her mind. He returned with a second helping without a word. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Stop thanking me." "Why?" "Because I'm not doing anything special." He sat down at the table across from her, his own plate untouched. "I'm just treating you like a person. That's not something to be grateful for. That's just baseline decent." Ellie stared at him. This strange, quiet man, with the wolf-gray eyes and the rough hands and the cabin in the middle of nowhere. "Why do you live out here alone?" Sam's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I like the quiet. That's not an answer either. You're full of questions today. I'm trying to figure out if you're going to kill me in my sleep. He looked at her, then really looked, and she saw something shift in his expression. Not anger. Something deeper. Sadder. I had a wife, he said finally. Ruth. She died 6 years ago. Childbirth. He paused. The baby didn't make it either. Ellie's breath caught. I'm sorry. After that, I couldn't stay in town. Couldn't look at the places we'd been together, the house we'd built. So I came out here. Started over. He picked up his coffee cup, staring into it like it held answers. I'm not going to hurt you, Ellie. I know you don't believe that yet, but I've seen enough pain in this life. I'm not interested in causing more. The baby stirred and began to cry. Ellie shifted her attention to soothing her, grateful for the distraction from the weight of Sam's words. She's hungry again, she said. Babies usually are. Sam stood. I'll give you privacy. Need to check on the cattle anyway. He pulled on his coat and hat and paused at the door. One more thing, he said. That front door. There's no lock on it. Ellie frowned. What do you mean? I mean, you can leave anytime you want. Walk right out. I won't stop you. I won't chase you. His pale eyes held hers. You're not a prisoner here, Ellie. You're a guest. Understand? She nodded slowly, not trusting her voice. Good. He tipped his hat. I'll be back in a few hours. The door closed behind him and Ellie was alone again. She fed her daughter in silence, thinking about everything Sam had said. About choice and freedom and doors without locks. About a wife named Ruth, who died giving life just like Ellie had almost died last night. He understood, she realized. Not just intellectually, but in his bones. He knew what it was like to lose everything. To have your world shatter and leave you standing in the wreckage. That was why he'd bought her. Not for himself, but because he couldn't watch it happen to someone else. The thought made her want to cry. She looked down at her daughter, finally peaceful, her belly full, and her tiny body warm against Ellie's chest. We need to name you, Ellie whispered. Sam's right. You can't just be the baby forever. She thought about all the names she'd known. Her mother's name, Bridget, too full of grief to use. Her grandmother's name, Kathleen, too distant to mean anything. All the names of girls she'd known in bondage, names that carried too much pain. Then she thought about this morning. About waking up in a warm bed. About bacon and coffee and a door with no lock. Hope, she said softly, trying out the word. Because you were born in the darkest night and you're still here. Because maybe, just maybe, things can get better. The baby made a small sound, almost like agreement. Hope Callahan. Ellie smiled through her tears. That's who you are. That's who you'll always be. Outside, the snow continued to fall. But inside the little cabin, something new was beginning. Something fragile and uncertain and terrifying. Something that might just be a future. The days blurred together in a rhythm Ellie didn't recognize. She woke when Hope cried, fed her, changed her, held her while she slept. And through it all, Sam moved around the cabin like a ghost, always present, but never intrusive, always helpful, but never demanding. He cooked meals and left them on the table. He stoked the fire before dawn, so she'd wake to warmth. He brought fresh water from the well and heated it for washing. He did everything a husband might do and asked for nothing in return. It made Ellie's skin crawl. You're staring at me again, Sam said on the third morning, not looking up from the harness he was mending. I'm trying to figure you out. Not much to figure. I'm a simple man. Simple men don't spend $300 on strangers. Sam's hands paused on the leather. Maybe not. So what are you? He set down the harness and finally met her eyes. Tired mostly. Tired of watching people hurt each other. Tired of standing by and doing nothing. He picked up the harness again. Figured I'd try something different. Ellie pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Hope was sleeping in the cradle Sam had brought down from the loft, a small wooden thing he'd built years ago for a baby who never got to use it. "Your wife," Ellie said carefully. "Ruth, did you build that cradle for her baby?" Sam's jaw tightened. "Yes." "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked. It's fine." But his voice said it wasn't. "It's been 6 years. I've made my peace with it." "Have you—" The question hung between them. Sam looked at her with those pale gray eyes, and for a moment she saw something behind the calm facade, something raw and unhealed. "Most days," he said quietly. "Some days are harder than others." Ellie understood that. Some days she could almost forget what had been done to her. Other days the memories came flooding back so hard she couldn't breathe. "Why do you keep looking at me like that?" Sam asked. "Like what?" "Like you're waiting for me to hurt you." The directness of the question startled her. She looked away, focusing on the fire crackling in the stove. "Because everyone does," she said finally. "Eventually. Everyone hurts me eventually." Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I reckon that's been your experience. Can't blame you for expecting it to continue. But I'm not everyone." He stood and hung the mended harness on a hook by the door. "And I'm going to prove that to you, Ellie. Not with words. Words are cheap. But with time. With actions." He pulled on his coat. "I'm going to check on the cattle. You need anything before I go?" She shook her head, still processing his words. "All right then. I'll be back in a few hours." He paused at the door. "There's soup on the stove if you get hungry. And Ellie." "Yes. That door still doesn't have a lock, just in case you forgot." Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the fire and the sleeping baby, and a warmth in her chest she didn't know what to do with. The first week passed. Ellie's body healed faster than she expected. The bleeding stopped. Her strength returned. She could walk across the cabin without getting dizzy, could hold Hope for hours without her arms shaking. But her mind was slower to mend. Every time Sam moved too quickly, she flinched. Every time he raised his voice, even just to call in the horses, her heart raced. Every time he came through the door, she braced for the blow that never came. He noticed. Of course he noticed. "I'm not going to hit you," he said one evening after she'd jerked away from his hand, reaching past her for the salt. "I know." "Your body doesn't seem to." Ellie set down her fork, appetite gone. "I can't help it. It's instinct." "I know." Sam's voice was gentle. "I'm not blaming you. Just saying I notice. And I understand." "How could you possibly understand?" "Because I've seen it before." He took a slow sip of coffee. "After my sister was sold, my mother was the same way. Jumped at shadows. Couldn't sleep. Spent years waiting for something terrible to happen." Ellie went very still. "Your sister was sold." Sam set down his cup. His face had gone hard the way it did whenever he talked about the past. "Margaret. We called her Maggie. She was 12 years old." His voice was flat, controlled. "Our father died in a farming accident. Left debts we didn't know about. Creditors came calling. Mother tried to pay, but there wasn't enough, so they took Maggie instead." "Oh, God." "I was 14, too young to stop them, too small to fight." Sam's hands had curled into fists on the table. "I watched them drag her out of the house. She was screaming my name, begging me to help her, and I couldn't do a damn thing." Ellie felt tears burning in her eyes. "Sam. I never saw her again. Don't know if she's alive or dead. Don't know what happened to her." He looked up, and his pale eyes were bright with old pain. "That's why I was at that auction, Ellie. Not to buy. I never buy. But sometimes I go just to watch. Just to see if maybe one day I'll find her. And instead you found me." "Yeah." His voice softened. "I saw you up on that platform holding that baby bleeding and terrified, and all I could think was, that could be Maggie. That could be my sister and nobody's helping her." He shook his head. "I couldn't save Maggie, but I could save you." Ellie didn't know what to say. What could she say? This man had carried his sister's ghost for 20 years, and he'd used that grief to pull Ellie out of hell. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "About Maggie. About all of it." "Me too." Sam stood and began clearing the dishes. "But sorry doesn't change anything. Only actions change things." "Is that why you're helping me, to make up for what you couldn't do for her?" Sam paused a plate in each hand. "Partly. But mostly because it's the right thing to do. Because you're a person who deserves a chance to live. And because—" He trailed off. "Because what?" "Because this cabin's been too quiet for too long." He carried the dishes to the wash basin. "And maybe I'm tired of being alone." That night, Ellie lay awake for hours listening to Sam's steady breathing from his bedroll by the stove. Hope slept peacefully in her cradle, making soft baby sounds that filled the silence. He wasn't what she'd expected. Nothing about this was what she'd expected. She'd spent 5 years learning that men took what they wanted, that kindness was always a trap, that hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. And now, here was this quiet rancher, with his wolf-gray eyes and his dead wife and his lost sister, offering her everything she'd dreamed of and asking nothing in return. It terrified her. Because if she started to believe in it, started to trust it, started to hope, then losing it would destroy her. Better to stay guarded. Better to keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Better to protect what was left of her heart. But even as she told herself this, she could feel the walls starting to crack. The second week brought snow. Not the light flurries that had fallen since Ellie arrived, but a real storm that howled around the cabin for 3 days straight. The wind rattled the windows and drove drifts up against the door, and Sam had to dig a path to the barn each morning just to feed the horses. Ellie watched him from the window, this solitary man fighting against nature, with nothing but a shovel and stubborn determination. He never complained, never cursed the weather, just did what needed to be done and came back inside with snow in his hair and ice on his beard. "You'll catch your death," she said when he stumbled through the door on the second day, his lips blue with cold. "Probably." He stripped off his frozen coat and moved toward the stove. "But the horses need to eat." "You could wait until the storm passes." "They'd starve. Can't ask them to wait on weather." Ellie poured coffee and brought it to him without thinking. He took the cup with a surprised look, his cold fingers brushing against hers. "Thank you," he said. "It's just coffee." "It's the first time you've done something for me without being asked." Ellie hadn't realized it until he said it. She stepped back, flustered. "I should check on Hope." "She's sleeping fine. I can hear her breathing from here." Sam wrapped both hands around the warm cup. "Sit with me, just for a minute." She hesitated, then sat at the table across from him. "What's wrong?" Sam asked. "Nothing." "Ellie?" She looked up at him, at his weathered face and his patient eyes. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "I don't know how to be here, how to act, what you expect from me." "I don't expect anything." "Everyone expects something." "I'm not everyone." He said it without irritation, just statement of fact. "And I know you don't believe that yet, but I keep saying it because it's true. There's no test you have to pass, no performance you have to give. You're just here. That's enough." "Why? Why what? Why is that enough?" Ellie's voice cracked. "I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I'm a woman who's been bought and sold and used up. Why would just existing be enough for anyone?" Sam set down his coffee cup and leaned forward. "You want to know what I see when I look at you?" "I'm not sure I do." "Too bad. I'm going to tell you anyway." His pale eyes held hers. "I see a woman who survived things that would have killed most people. I see a mother who gave birth in chains and still had enough love left to name her baby Hope. I see someone who's been knocked down 100 times and keeps getting back up." He paused. "That's not nothing, Ellie. That's the strongest damn thing in the world." She couldn't speak. The tears she'd been holding back for days finally spilled over, streaming down her cheeks. Sam didn't move to comfort her, didn't try to touch her. He just sat there steady and patient while she fell apart. "I'm sorry," she gasped when she could breathe again. "I don't know why I'm crying." "Because you're safe enough to," he said simply. "Sometimes we hold it together until we don't have to anymore. Then it all comes out." "Is that what happened to you after Ruth died?" Sam was quiet for a long moment. "Yeah. I held it together for the funeral, for the burial, for the first week. Then one morning I woke up and I couldn't stop screaming. Screamed until my voice gave out. Then I just lay on the floor and stared at the ceiling for 3 days." "What made you get up?" "Honestly, the horses. They needed to eat. Couldn't let them starve because I was drowning in grief." He smiled faintly. "Animals don't care about your pain. They just need you to show up. So I showed up, and eventually showing up got easier." Ellie wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Is that what you're doing with me?" "Showing up. Trying to." Sam stood and refilled his coffee cup. "It's the only thing I know how to do." The storm broke on the 3rd day. Ellie woke to silence so absolute after the constant howling that she thought for a moment she'd gone deaf. Then she heard Hope's soft breathing and Sam moving around the cabin, and she realized the wind had finally stopped. "Sun's out," Sam said when he saw her stir. "Going to be cold but clear. Thought I might ride into town for supplies. We're running low on flour." Ellie's stomach clenched. "Town. Don't worry, I won't be gone long. And I'm not leaving you here alone. I mean I am, but—" He paused, looking uncomfortable. "What I mean is you'll be safe. Nobody comes out this far. And if they do, there's a rifle above the door. You know how to shoot?" "No." "Then don't touch it." He grabbed his hat from the hook. "Just keep the door locked. I mean, there's no lock, but keep it closed. I'll be back before dark." "Sam." He paused, hand on the door handle. "Be careful." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or something warmer. "I will," he said. "Take care of yourself while I'm gone. And Ellie." "Yes. This is your home now, as long as you want it to be. Understand?" Then he was gone, and Ellie was alone with Hope and a cabin that suddenly felt very large and very quiet. She spent the day doing things she'd never been allowed to do before. She explored every corner of the cabin, touching the books on the small shelf, the worn quilt on the bed, the photograph on the mantel of a young woman with kind eyes, who must have been Ruth. She opened cupboards and found neat rows of preserved vegetables, dried meat, coffee sugar. Everything organized, everything in its place. She found a drawer full of women's clothing. Ruth's things, she guessed. Dresses and undergarments, and a beautiful blue shawl embroidered with flowers. Sam hadn't thrown them away, hadn't been able to let go. He loved her, Ellie said to Hope, who was watching her with curious eyes. Really loved her. You can tell by the things he kept. Hope gurgled in response. "I know you can't understand me yet, but someday I'm going to tell you about the man who saved us, about how he bought our freedom and never asked for anything back, about how he gave us a home when we had nothing." Ellie's voice caught. "I'm going to make sure you know what a good man looks like, so you never settle for less." She was nursing Hope by the fire when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Sam had said he'd be back before dark, and the sun was just starting to set. But what if it wasn't Sam? What if someone else had come? She grabbed Hope and backed into the corner, her eyes fixed on the door. It opened. Sam stepped through, his arms full of supplies, snow dusting his shoulders. "Got everything we needed? Flour, sugar, some fabric, I thought you might." He stopped when he saw her pressed against the wall. "Ellie." "What's wrong?" "Nothing." She forced herself to relax. "I just wasn't sure it was you." Sam set down the supplies and crossed to her, slowly, his movements deliberate. "I should have called out before I came in. I'm sorry. Didn't think." "It's fine. I'm fine." "You're shaking." She was. Her whole body was trembling, and she couldn't make it stop. Sam stopped a few feet away, giving her space. "I'm going to reach out my hand," he said quietly. "Just my hand. and I want you to take it if you can. But if you can't, that's okay too." He extended his palm toward her. Open. Waiting. Ellie stared at it. This hand that had helped her down from the auction platform. That had caught her when she stumbled. That had never once reached for her in anger or demand. She reached out and took it. His fingers closed around hers, warm and steady. "There you go," he said softly. "See just me. Nobody else. You're safe." "I know." Her voice came out barely a whisper. "I'm starting to know." They stood there for a long moment, connected by nothing but their hands while the fire crackled, and Hope made soft sounds against Ellie's chest. Then Sam gently released her and stepped back. "Got something for you. From town." He moved to the pile of supplies and pulled out a wrapped package. "It's not much, but I thought you might want something of your own." Ellie took the package with trembling fingers and unwrapped it carefully. Inside was fabric soft blue cotton enough to make a dress, and underneath it a small leather journal with blank pages. "The shopkeeper's wife helped me pick the fabric," Sam said, sounding almost embarrassed. "Said blue would match your eyes. And the journal, I thought maybe you'd want to write things down. My mother used to say writing helped her make sense of her thoughts." Ellie couldn't speak. No one had given her a gift in years. Not since before her mother died. Not since before everything fell apart. "If you don't like them, I can. They're perfect." She looked up at him through tears. "Sam, they're perfect. Thank you." "You're welcome." He turned away, busying himself with putting away the supplies. "There's more news from town, but it can wait until tomorrow. You should rest." "What kind of news?" Sam's shoulders tensed. "Nothing urgent. Just talk about some men asking questions, looking for a woman who was sold at the auction a few weeks back." He glanced over his shoulder. "Seems someone thinks they have a prior claim." Ellie's blood turned to ice. "A claim? What kind of claim?" "Don't know yet. But I'm going to find out." Sam's voice was hard. "Nobody's taking you from here, Ellie. I promise you that." "You can't promise that. If they have papers, if they have legal." "Then I'll buy the papers. I'll buy whatever needs buying. And if that doesn't work, I'll figure something else out." He turned to face her fully. "You're not property anymore. You're a person. And I'm going to make damn sure you stay that way." The fierceness in his voice made Ellie's breath catch. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care so much?" Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because I couldn't save Maggie. Because I couldn't save Ruth. Because I've spent 20 years watching people I love get taken away, and I'm done. I'm done standing by. I'm done being helpless." His pale eyes burned. "You and that baby are the first good thing that's happened in this cabin in 6 years. And I'm not losing that. Not without a fight." Ellie felt something shift in her chest. Something she'd thought was dead, buried under years of pain and fear and hopelessness. "Sam." "Yeah." "My name," she said slowly. "Eleanor Callahan. But you can call me Ellie. And I'd like to know yours. Really know it. Not just the name you give strangers." Sam's expression softened. "Samuel James Thornton," he said. "Born in East Texas, raised on a farm that doesn't exist anymore. Lost a sister, lost a wife, lost a baby. Built this place with my own 2 hands because I needed somewhere to hide from the world." He paused. "But I'm not hiding anymore. And I don't want you to hide either." Ellie took a shaky breath. "I was born in Boston," she heard herself saying. "My parents came over from Ireland during the famine. My father drank. My mother died when I was 14. I was sold 3 months later to pay his debts." The words came faster now, spilling out like water through a broken dam. "I've been property for 5 years. I've been beaten and starved and used and thrown away. I stopped believing in anything good a long time ago." She looked up at Sam, this stranger, who'd become something else entirely. "But I want to believe again." She whispered, "I want to believe in this. In you. In this life you're offering. I'm just scared." Scared of what? Of losing it. Of having it taken away. Of waking up and finding out it was all a dream. Sam crossed to her slowly, and for the first time since she'd arrived, reached up to touch her face. Just his fingertips against her cheek. Gentle. Questioning. "This isn't a dream," he said quietly. "And I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you want me to." Ellie leaned into his touch just slightly. "I don't want you to. Then I won't." They stood there in the fading firelight, connected by something fragile and new and terrifying. Hope had fallen asleep against Ellie's chest, peaceful and unaware of the weight of the moment. Finally, Sam stepped back. "You should eat," he said, his voice rough. "I'll warm up some stew." "Sam." "Yeah. Thank you. For the gifts, for the words, for everything." He nodded once, then turned to the stove. Ellie watched him move, this quiet man who'd pulled her from the darkness, and felt the first stirrings of something she hadn't felt in years. Not love. Not yet. That would take time. But trust. The beginning of trust. And maybe that was enough. Later that night, after the stew was eaten and the fire was banked, and Hope was sleeping soundly in her cradle, Ellie opened the journal Sam had given her and picked up a pencil. She stared at the blank page for a long time. Then she began to write. January 15th. I am alive. My daughter is alive. We are in a cabin in the middle of nowhere with a man who bought our freedom and asks for nothing. His name is Samuel Thornton. He lost a sister and a wife and a baby. He carries his grief like armor. But underneath it, I think there's someone worth knowing, someone worth trusting. I am afraid to hope. I have been afraid for so long. But today he touched my face and called me by my name and looked at me like I mattered. Maybe I do matter. Maybe we both do. I don't know what tomorrow brings. But for the first time in 5 years, I want to find out. She closed the journal and pressed it against her chest. Outside, the wind had started to blow again, but inside the cabin, everything was warm. Everything was quiet. Everything was beginning. 3 weeks passed, and Ellie began to forget what fear tasted like. Not completely. The old instincts still lived in her bones, still made her flinch at sudden movements and loud sounds. But the constant terror that had been her companion for 5 years was fading, replaced by something quieter. Something that felt almost like peace. She learned the rhythm of the ranch. Sam rose before dawn to tend the cattle. She woke with hope fed her changed, her held her while the sun crept over the mountains. They ate breakfast together, she and Sam talking about small things, weather and horses, and how much hope had grown. Then Sam went out to work, and Ellie stayed in the cabin caring for her daughter, and slowly making the space her own. She'd sewn the blue fabric into a dress, wearing it for the first time on a Sunday morning that felt like church, even though they didn't pray. Sam had looked at her for a long moment, then said, "Ruth would have liked you. She always said blue was the color of new beginnings." Ellie had cried at that. She seemed to cry a lot these days, but the tears felt different now, cleansing instead of desperate. She was hanging laundry on the line behind the cabin when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong, high and thin, carried on the winter wind. Crying. Not Hope. Hope was sleeping in her cradle inside. This was different, older, more desperate. Ellie dropped the shirt she was holding and ran toward the sound. It was coming from the tree line, from the thick pines that bordered Sam's property. "Hello," she called. "Is someone there?" The crying stopped abruptly, then silence. "I won't hurt you." Ellie moved closer, her heart pounding. "I heard you crying. Do you need help?" A figure emerged from behind a tree, small, dirty, barely 3 feet tall. A child. A little girl with matted brown hair and huge, terrified eyes. She was wearing nothing but a thin, torn dress, her feet bare and blue with cold. She couldn't have been more than 4 years old. "Oh my God!" Ellie rushed forward and dropped to her knees in the snow. "Sweetheart, where did you come from? Where are your parents?" The girl didn't answer. She just stood there, shaking her lips, cracked and bleeding, her eyes fixed on Ellie with a mix of fear and desperate hope. You're freezing. Ellie stripped off her own shawl and wrapped it around the child's tiny shoulders. Can you tell me your name? Can you talk? The girl's mouth opened, but no sound came out. It's okay. You don't have to talk, but I need to get you inside. You're going to freeze out here. Ellie reached out slowly, giving the child time to pull away. Is it okay if I pick you up? The girl didn't move, didn't react at all, just stood there shaking. Ellie made the decision and scooped her up. The child weighed almost nothing. Her bones sharp through her skin, her body rigid with cold and fear. She didn't struggle, didn't cry out, just went limp in Ellie's arms like a doll. You're safe now, Ellie murmured as she carried her toward the cabin. I've got you. You're safe. Inside, she wrapped the girl in every blanket she could find and sat her in front of the stove. The child's eyes followed her every movement, wide and wary, but she didn't speak, didn't make a sound. I'm going to get you some food, Ellie said, and something warm to drink. You just stay right there, okay? She heated milk and cut bread into small pieces, moving quickly, her mind racing. Where had this child come from? How long had she been in the woods? Was someone looking for her? When she brought the food to the girl, the child stared at it for a long moment. Then she grabbed the bread with both hands and shoved it into her mouth, eating so fast she choked. Slow down. Ellie knelt beside her. There's more. You don't have to rush. The girl didn't slow down. She ate like someone who didn't know when the next meal would come, like someone who'd learned that food could be taken away without warning. Ellie's heart broke. She knew that hunger. She remembered it. When did you last eat? She asked softly. The girl looked up at her, milk dripping down her chin, and something in her eyes shifted. The first crack in the wall of silence. Mama said wait. The voice was barely a whisper, rusty from disuse. Said wait for her to come back. Your mama left you. The girl nodded. How long ago? A shrug. The child didn't know. Didn't have words for time. Where's your papa? The girl flinched violently, pulling back as if Ellie had struck her. The fear that flashed across her face was so raw, so familiar, that Ellie's breath caught. It's okay, she said quickly. I won't ask about him again. You don't have to talk about anything you don't want to. She sat back on her heels, giving the child space, and tried to think. A little girl abandoned in the woods, terrified of the mention of a father. The marks on her arms visible now that the blanket had slipped. Bruises in the shape of fingers. Ellie knew this story. She'd lived versions of it herself. What's your name, sweetheart? The girl clutched the blanket tighter. Rosie. Rosie. That's a beautiful name. I'm Ellie. She gestured toward the cradle where Hope was starting to stir. And that's my daughter Hope. She's just a baby. Do you like babies? Rosie's eyes went to the cradle, and something softened in her face. Baby, she whispered. That's right. She's very small. She needs someone to take care of her. Kind of like you need someone to take care of you right now. Ellie paused. Would you like to stay here for a while, where it's warm? Rosie looked at her with those huge, haunted eyes. Stay. Yes, stay. With me and Hope and Sam. He's the man who lives here. He's kind. He won't hurt you. The fear flickered back. Man. A good man. I promise. He saved me and Hope when we had nowhere to go. He'll help you too. Rosie was silent for a long moment, her small body trembling with more than cold. Then she said in that tiny broken voice, Mama's not coming back, is she? Ellie felt tears burn her eyes. I don't know, sweetheart, but I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Sam returned at dusk to find 3 people in his cabin instead of 2. He stopped in the doorway, snow-dusting his shoulders, and stared at the small figure huddled by the stove. Ellie? She came out of the woods. Ellie rose from where she'd been sitting beside Rosie. About 4 hours ago. She's been abandoned. Her mother left her, and I think he hurt her. Sam's jaw tightened. He closed the door slowly, his movements deliberate, non-threatening. "Hey there," he said, his voice dropping to something soft and low. "I'm Sam. What's your name?" Rosie pressed herself back against the chair, her eyes fixed on him with naked terror. "She's scared of men," Ellie said quietly. "She flinched when I mentioned her father." Sam nodded, his expression darkening with understanding. He stayed by the door, keeping his distance. "Rosie," he said, kneeling down to make himself smaller. "That's a pretty name. You know what, I have a horse named Rosie. Well, her real name is Rosemary, but I call her Rosie. She's brown with a white spot on her nose. Do you like horses?" Rosie watched him, still trembling, but something in her posture shifted slightly. "I like horses," she whispered. "Me too. Maybe tomorrow, if you're feeling better, I can show you Rosemary. Would you like that?" A tiny nod. "Good." Sam stood slowly and backed toward the door. "I'm going to go take care of the animals now. Ellie will stay with you. And tomorrow we'll figure things out." "Okay." He looked at Ellie, a whole conversation passing between them in that single glance. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Rosie exhaled shakily. "He's not mean." "No, sweetheart, he's not mean." Ellie moved back to sit beside her. "Sam is the kindest man I've ever met. He found me when I was scared and alone, just like you. He gave me a home. He'll do the same for you. Promise." The word was so small, so hopeful, that it nearly broke Ellie. "I promise." That night, after Rosie finally fell asleep on a pile of blankets by the fire, Ellie sat at the table with Sam, speaking in low voices. "We can't keep her," Sam said, though his voice held no conviction. "She's got to have family somewhere. Someone who's looking for her. Someone who beat her." Ellie's voice was hard. "Look at the bruises on her arms. Look how she flinches. You want to send her back to that?" "Of course not. But we can't just keep a child that doesn't belong to us." "She doesn't belong to anyone." Ellie felt tears threatening again. "Don't you see? She's like me. Like Hope. She's been thrown away. Left to die." She reached across the table and grabbed Sam's hand. "You said you couldn't save Maggie. You said you couldn't save Ruth, but you saved me. You can save her too." Sam looked at their joined hands, then at Rosie's small form sleeping by the fire. "If someone comes looking for her, then we deal with that when it happens. But until then, she stays. She has to stay." Ellie's grip tightened. "Please, Sam, I can't let another child suffer the way I suffered. I can't." Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right. She stays. Thank you." "Don't thank me." He squeezed her hand before releasing it. "Thank yourself. You're the one who found her. You're the one who brought her in from the cold." He looked at her with something like wonder. "You keep collecting broken things, Ellie Callahan. Maybe because I know what it's like to be broken." "Yeah." His voice was soft. "Maybe so." The days that followed were difficult. Rosie didn't speak much. She startled at every noise, cried in her sleep, and refused to be in the same room as Sam unless Ellie was there. She wouldn't eat unless Ellie gave her the food directly, wouldn't let anyone touch her without warning, wouldn't make eye contact for more than a few seconds. But she followed Ellie everywhere. When Ellie cooked, Rosie stood at her elbow watching silently. When Ellie fed Hope, Rosie sat beside her, fascinated by the baby. When Ellie sewed or cleaned or wrote in her journal, Rosie was there, a small shadow, never more than an arm's length away. "She's attached to you," Sam observed one evening. "Like a duckling with its mother. She needs someone to trust, someone who won't hurt her." "You know, we don't know her story. Not really. Don't know where she came from or why she was left." "Does it matter?" Ellie looked at him. "She's a child. She's alone. She's scared. That's all I need to know." Sam nodded slowly. "You're good at this. The mothering thing." "I'm making it up as I go." "That's what all parents do." He smiled faintly. "You should have seen me with the calves when I first started ranching. Didn't know what I was doing either. Just kept showing up, kept trying. Eventually it worked out. Is that your advice? Just keep showing up. It's the only advice I've got. Ellie thought about that a lot over the following days. Showing up. Being present. Not running away when things got hard. It wasn't complicated advice, but it was the kind that mattered. She showed up for Hope, feeding her at all hours, singing to her when she cried, watching her grow stronger every day. She showed up for Rosie patient and gentle, never pushing, never demanding. She showed up for Sam, sharing meals and conversations, and the quiet intimacy of living side by side. And slowly things began to change. It started with small moments. Rosie reaching for Ellie's hand during a thunderstorm. Rosie laughing at Hope's expressions. Rosie falling asleep against Ellie's shoulder instead of alone by the fire. Then bigger moments. Rosie calling her mama instead of Ellie. Rosie letting Sam sit next to her at dinner. Rosie asking if she could pet Rosemary the horse. She's healing, Sam said one night, watching Rosie sleep peacefully for the first time since she'd arrived. Because of you. Because of us, Ellie corrected. You've been patient with her, gentle. She sees that. She still flinches when I get too close. Give her time. Trust isn't built in a day. Speaking from experience, Ellie looked at him, at his weathered face and kind eyes. Yeah, she said quietly. Speaking from experience. A week after Rosie arrived, Ellie woke to find her sitting up in her blankets, staring at the window. What is it, sweetheart? Someone's coming. Ellie's blood went cold. She moved to the window and looked out. In the early morning light, she could see a figure approaching on horseback. Not Sam. Sam was in the barn. This was someone else. Stay here, she told Rosie. Stay quiet. Take care of Hope. She grabbed the rifle from above the door, even though she had no idea how to use it, and stepped onto the porch. The rider was a man, middle-aged, well-dressed, with a cruel set to his mouth. He pulled his horse to a stop and looked down at her with an expression that made her stomach turn. Morning, ma'am. He tipped his hat, but there was no courtesy in it. I'm looking for a woman. Young red hair, had a baby a few weeks back. I'm told she might be staying on this property. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. The man's smile widened. See, I have a contract that says that woman belongs to me, bought and paid for, and I'm here to collect. There's no one here but me. You're a terrible liar. The man dismounted and took a step toward the porch. I'm going to ask you one more time. Where is Eleanor Callahan? Ellie's hands tightened on the rifle. I'm Eleanor Callahan. The man's eyes lit up. Well now, that makes things simpler. He pulled a folded paper from his coat. I'm Cornelius Webb, and according to this contract, you belong to me. I don't belong to anyone. The law says different. Webb waved the paper. This here is a binding contract between myself and your previous owner. He sold you to me before you ever ended up at that auction, which means the man who bought you that night, Samuel Thornton, committed theft, and I'm here to reclaim my property. I'm not property. Yes, you are. Webb's voice went hard. You're property just like that baby of yours, and unless you want me to bring the sheriff down here, you'll come quietly. The hell she will. Sam's voice came from behind Webb. He'd emerged from the barn without making a sound, his rifle raised and steady. Webb turned slowly. Mr. Thornton, I was hoping we could handle this civilly. There's nothing civil about what you're doing. Sam moved closer, his pale eyes cold as winter. She's not going anywhere with you. The law's on my side. The law is whatever men with money say it is, and I've got money. Sam kept the rifle trained on Webb's chest. How much? Webb blinked. Excuse me. The contract. How much to buy it from you? It's not for sale. Everything's for sale. Name your price. Webb was silent for a moment, calculating. Then he smiled, that same cruel smile that made Ellie's skin crawl. $400. Done. The smile faltered. You don't have that kind of money. I do. Sam's voice was flat. I've got it in the house. I'll get it right now. You give me that contract, and you ride out of here and never come back." Webb looked at Ellie, then at Sam, then at the rifle still pointed at his chest. "Make it 500. "No." Sam's jaw tightened. 400. Final offer. Take it, or I put a bullet in you and burn that contract myself." The silence stretched. Ellie could hear her own heartbeat, could feel Rosie watching from inside the cabin, could feel her whole future hanging in the balance. "Fine." Webb spat. 400, but if you're lying about having the money." "I don't lie." Sam lowered the rifle slightly. "Ellie, go inside. Get the strongbox from under the bed. Don't come out until I tell you." Ellie hesitated. "Go." Sam's voice was gentle but firm. "I've got this." She went. Inside, Rosie was pressed against the wall, her eyes huge with fear. Hope was crying in her cradle, picking up on the tension. "It's okay," Ellie said, though she wasn't sure it was. "Everything's going to be okay." She found the strongbox under the bed, heavy and locked. Sam had given her the key weeks ago, told her where he kept his savings in case of emergency. She'd never thought she'd actually need it. She carried it to the porch and set it down. "Count it," Sam told Webb. 400. Then you hand over that contract and get off my property." Webb counted the money twice, his eyes glittering with greed. Then he tossed the contract onto the porch and mounted his horse. "You're a fool, Thornton. That woman's nothing but trouble. Get off my land." Webb rode away without another word. Sam watched until he disappeared into the trees, then lowered the rifle and picked up the contract. "It's over," he said quietly. "He won't be back." Ellie stared at the paper in his hands. $400. "Sam, that's just money." He tore the contract in half, then in half again, and threw the pieces into the snow. "You're worth more than money." Ellie felt her legs give way. She sat down hard on the porch steps, shaking, tears streaming down her face. Sam sat beside her, not touching, just present. "I'm free," she whispered. "I'm actually free." "You were always free. That paper didn't mean anything. Not really. It meant everything to men like him. Men like him don't matter anymore." Sam's voice was fierce. "You matter. Hope matters. That little girl inside matters. Everything else is just noise." Ellie looked at him through her tears. "Why do you keep saving me?" "Because you're worth saving." He reached out and took her hand, gentle but certain. "And because I made a promise. To myself. That I'd never stand by again. Never watch someone I care about get taken away." He paused. "I care about you, Ellie. More than I thought I could care about anyone again." "Sam?" "You don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know." But Ellie did want to say something. She wanted to tell him that she cared too. That somewhere in the past weeks, fear had transformed into trust, and trust had become something deeper. She squeezed his hand. "I know," she said softly. "I know you care. And I think I'm starting to care too." Sam's eyes searched her face. Yeah. He smiled, then a real smile that transformed his weathered face into something almost beautiful. "Well," he said. "That's something then." "It's something," Ellie agreed. Behind them, the cabin door creaked open. Rosie's small face appeared pale and frightened. "Is the bad man gone?" Sam released Ellie's hand and stood turning to face the child. "He's gone," he said. "He won't come back. Promise." Sam knelt down to Rosie's level, slow and careful. "I promise. Nobody's going to hurt you. Not you, not Ellie, not Hope. I'll protect all of you. That's what I do." Rosie studied him for a long moment. Then she did something she'd never done before. She reached out and touched his face. "You're not mean," she said, wonder in her voice. "You're like Mama. You're safe." Sam's eyes went bright with emotion. "That's right," he said roughly. "I'm safe, and so are you." Rosie nodded, then looked at Ellie. Can we go inside now? I'm cold. Of course, sweetheart. Ellie stood and held out her hand. Let's go inside. Rosie took her hand. Then, hesitantly, she reached out her other hand toward Sam. He took it. The three of them walked into the cabin together, and Ellie felt something settle in her chest. Something that felt like family. That night, after Rosie was asleep and Hope was fed and the fire was burning low, Ellie sat at the table with her journal. February 2nd, she wrote. Today I almost lost everything. A man came with a piece of paper that said I belonged to him. But Sam bought that paper and tore it up. He spent $400 to make sure I stay free. I don't know what I did to deserve someone like him, but I'm not going to question it anymore. I'm just going to be grateful. I have a daughter who's growing stronger every day. I have a little girl who needs me. And I have a man who sees me as a person, not property. Maybe that's what freedom really is. Not the absence of chains, but the presence of people who refuse to let you be bound. She closed the journal and looked across the room at Sam, who was mending a harness by lamplight. Sam. He looked up. Thank you. I told you to stop thanking me. I know, but I mean it. For everything. For today. For all of it. He set down the harness and crossed to her, stopping just close enough to touch, but not touching. You're welcome, he said. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Why? He smiled. Because I'm going to teach Rosie to ride a horse. And something tells me she's going to be asking questions from sunup to sundown. Ellie laughed a real laugh, full and warm. You're right. She probably will. Get some rest, Sam said softly. I'll keep watch. You don't have to keep watch. Webb's not coming back. I know. His eyes held hers. But I like watching over you. Makes me feel like I'm doing something useful. Ellie reached out and touched his arm. You are. More than you know. She went to bed, then curling up beside Hope and Rosie, listening to Sam's quiet movements as he banked the fire and settled into his bedroll. And for the first time since she'd been sold at 14 years old, Ellie fell asleep feeling not just safe, but cherished. February turned bitter cold, the kind of cold that crept into bones and refused to leave. But inside the cabin, warmth grew in ways that had nothing to do with the fire. Rosie began to bloom. She started talking more, her small voice filling the silence with questions and observations, and the kind of innocent chatter that only children could produce. She followed Sam to the barn, now no longer afraid of him watching with wide eyes as he tended the horses and cattle. She'd taken to Rosemary the mare with fierce devotion, spending hours brushing her coat and feeding her bits of apple. Papa Sam. She called him one morning, the words slipping out as naturally as breathing. Sam froze a bucket of feed in his hands. Ellie watched from the doorway, her heart in her throat. What did you call me? Sam's voice was rough. Rosie's face crumpled with sudden fear. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I won't say it again. No. Sam set down the bucket and knelt in the snow, bringing himself to her level. No, sweetheart. You don't have to be sorry. You can call me that if you want to. Really? Really? His voice cracked slightly. I'd be honored. Rosie's face transformed into a smile so bright it could have melted the snow. Papa Sam. She said again, testing it. I like that. Me too. Sam reached out and touched her hair gently. Me too, little one. Ellie turned away before they could see her crying. That night, after the children were asleep, she and Sam sat at the table in the low lamplight, sharing coffee and quiet conversation, as had become their habit. She called you Papa, Ellie said. I noticed. How do you feel about that? Sam was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup. Like I don't deserve it, he said finally. Like I'm standing in for someone I'll never measure up to. You're not standing in for anyone. You're just you. A broken man in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. A good man who saved 3 lives and asks nothing in return. Ellie reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. Sam, she chose you. That little girl who's terrified of men, who flinches at shadows, she chose to call you Papa. That means something. Sam turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. What about you? What about me? What do you call me in your head, I mean? When you think about me? Ellie felt heat rise to her cheeks. It was a direct question, the kind Sam rarely asked. I call you Sam, she said carefully. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. She looked down at their joined hands. I think of you as the man who gave me my life back, the man who makes me feel safe, the man I trust. Just trust. The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken things. Not just trust, Ellie admitted quietly. More than that, but I don't know what to call it. I've never felt it before. Sam squeezed her hand. I have, he said. Once, a long time ago. With Ruth. He paused. I didn't think I'd ever feel it again. Thought that part of me died with her. And now? Now I'm not so sure. His pale eyes held hers. You make me feel things I thought I'd forgotten, Ellie. Hope. Wanting something for myself. Looking forward to tomorrow instead of just getting through it. Sam. I'm not asking for anything. I know you've been through hell. I know trust takes time. I just wanted you to know where I stand. He released her hand and stood. I should check on the horses. Sam, wait. He paused at the door. Ellie stood and crossed to him, her heart pounding. She stopped just close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. I don't know what this is, she said. Between us. I don't know how to name it or what to do with it. But I know I don't want you to leave. I don't want to be alone again. And when I think about the future, I think about you in it. Something shifted in Sam's expression. Something vulnerable and raw. That's enough, he said roughly. That's more than enough. He reached out and touched her face, his calloused fingers gentle against her cheek. Ellie leaned into the touch, her eyes closing. Can I kiss you? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes. The kiss was soft, careful, a question more than a statement. His lips brushed against hers once, twice, then lingered. Ellie felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd kept locked away for years. When they finally parted, both breathing unsteadily, Sam rested his forehead against hers. I should still check on the horses, he said. I know, but I don't want to move. I know that too. They stood there for another moment, wrapped in something new and fragile, before Sam finally stepped back. I'll be back soon, he said. I'll be here. He smiled, that rare, soft smile she was learning to treasure, and went out into the cold. Ellie touched her lips, still tingling from the kiss, and felt something she'd thought was dead stir back to life. Hope. Real hope. For herself for once, and not just survival. The peace lasted 3 more days. Ellie was teaching Rosie to make bread. The little girl's hands covered in flour when the sound of multiple horses reached them. Not one horse like Webb had ridden. Several. Sam appeared in the doorway, his face tight. Get the girls into the back. Stay there until I come for you. Who is it? I don't know yet. Just go. Ellie grabbed Hope from her cradle and took Rosie's hand. Come on, sweetheart. We need to go to the other room. Why? Rosie's eyes were huge. Is the bad man back? I don't know, but we need to be quiet and stay hidden, okay? Like a game. Rosie nodded, her small body trembling, but trusting. They huddled in the small back room Sam had added to the cabin, the one he'd been building for the children. Ellie pressed her ear to the door, straining to hear. Voices outside. Sam's low and steady, and others louder, more aggressive. I told you I've never heard of any woman by that name. And I'm telling you, Mr. Thornton, we have reliable information that she's here. A new voice, cultured and cold. My client has a significant investment in this property, and he's not leaving without satisfaction. Your client can go to hell. There's nobody here but me. Then you won't mind if we search the premises. I mind very much. This is my land. You're trespassing. I have a warrant. The rustle of paper. Signed by Judge Fletcher himself, authorizing me to search for and reclaim property belonging to Mr. Cornelius Webb. Ellie's blood turned to ice. Webb. He hadn't given up. He'd just found another way. Webb sold his claim. Sam's voice was hard. I paid him $400 for that contract. Watched him tear it up myself. Mr. Webb disputes that account. He claims the contract was never valid because it was signed under duress. Your duress, to be specific. A pause. He also claims you stole his property at gunpoint. That's a hanging offense in this territory, Mr. Thornton. That's a lie. The judge seems to believe otherwise. Now you can step aside and let us search, or we can arrest you for obstruction and search anyway. Your choice. Silence stretched thick with tension. Ellie clutched Hope tighter, her mind racing. If they found her, they'd take her. Take Hope. Probably take Rosie, too. Everything Sam had sacrificed would be for nothing. She couldn't let that happen. Stay here, she whispered to Rosie. Don't make a sound. I'm going to help Papa Sam. Mama, no. I have to, sweetheart. But I'll be right back. I promise. She pressed a kiss to Rosie's forehead, handed Hope into her small arms, and slipped out of the room before the child could protest. The men outside turned as she emerged from the cabin. 4 of them, plus a man in a suit who was clearly the leader. Webb wasn't among them, but his presence hung over everything. I'm Eleanor Callahan. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. I'm the woman you're looking for. Ellie, no. Sam started toward her, but 2 of the men stepped into his path. It's okay. She met his eyes, trying to convey everything she felt. I won't let them hurt you, not because of me. The woman admits it. The suited man smiled, satisfied. Excellent. My name is Harrison Price, legal representative for Mr. Webb. You'll come with us now. On what grounds? On the grounds that you are property belonging to my client, and you have been illegally detained on this property for the past 6 weeks. I'm not property. I'm a person. That contract Sam bought that made me free. That contract was obtained through coercion and is therefore null and void. The original agreement stands. There was no coercion. Webb took the money willingly. That's not what Mr. Webb says. Price's smile widened. And that's not what Judge Fletcher believes. Now we can do this the easy way or the hard way. The easy way, you come quietly. The hard way. He gestured to his men. Well, let's just say it would be unpleasant for everyone. You're not taking her anywhere. Sam had broken free of the men blocking him and was moving toward Ellie, his whole body radiating protective fury. I don't care what your judge says. I don't care what Webb claims. She's not going with you. Then you leave me no choice. Price nodded to his men. Arrest Mr. Thornton for theft and obstruction, and collect the woman. Everything happened at once. Sam threw the first punch, dropping 1 man before the others could react. Ellie screamed as hands grabbed her arms, dragging her away from the cabin. She fought kicking and biting, but there were too many of them. Sam! He was fighting like a wild animal, fists and fury, but he was outnumbered. One of the men hit him with something, a club or a pistol butt, and he went down. No! Ellie screamed. Don't hurt him, please! Should have thought about that before. Price adjusted his cuffs, unmoved by the violence. Take them both. The woman to Mr. Webb, Mr. Thornton to the jail. What about the children? One of the men asked. Price paused. What children? Ellie's heart stopped. They didn't know. Webb hadn't told them about Hope or Rosie. They didn't know there were children in the cabin. There are no children, she said quickly. Just us. Price studied her for a moment, suspicious. Search the cabin, he ordered. No. Ellie pulled against the hands holding her. Please. They're just babies. They have nothing to do with this. Leave them alone. So there are children. Price's expression sharpened. Interesting. Mr. Webb mentioned a baby, said it was part of the property. He smiled. Bring the infant as well. No. Ellie fought harder, desperate now. She's mine. She's my daughter. You can't take her. According to the contract, any offspring belong to the owner as well. Standard terms. The men moved toward the cabin. Ellie screamed until her throat was raw. Screamed Rosie's name, telling her to run, to hide, to get away. Then everything went black. She woke in motion, her body jolting against hard wood. A wagon. She was in a wagon, her hands bound her head, throbbing. "She's awake!" A voice nearby. Ellie forced her eyes open. The suited man, Price, sat across from her, watching with cold satisfaction. "Where's my daughter?" Her voice was a croak. "Being transported separately. Mr. Webb felt it was better to keep you apart, prevent any unfortunate attempts at escape." "Where's Sam?" "Mr. Thornton is in the custody of the sheriff. He'll face trial for theft and assault." "He didn't steal anything. He paid for me." "That's not how the law sees it." Price smiled. "Mr. Webb is a very influential man, Miss Callahan. He has friends in high places, friends who are happy to help him reclaim what's rightfully his. I'm not his property. The courts disagree, as they've disagreed for years. Women like you have no rights, no standing, no voice. Your property pure and simple. The sooner you accept that, the easier your life will be." Ellie closed her eyes, fighting the despair that threatened to overwhelm her. This couldn't be happening. Not after everything. Not after she'd finally found hope, found family, found love. It couldn't end like this. But it was ending. She was being taken back into slavery, her daughter with her. Sam was in jail, probably facing a rigged trial. Rosie was alone in the cabin, terrified and abandoned. Everything was falling apart. She thought of Sam's face when he'd kissed her. The way he'd said her name like it was something precious. The way he'd fought for her even though he knew he couldn't win. She thought of Rosie's small hand in hers. The way she'd said "Mama" for the first time. The way she'd finally started to trust. She thought of Hope, her baby, her reason for living now in the hands of strangers who saw her as nothing but property. And she made a decision. She was not going back. Not without a fight. Not without trying everything. Not without exhausting every option. She'd escaped before. She could escape again. And this time, she had something worth fighting for. "Mr. Price," she said, keeping her voice steady, "I want to make a deal." Price raised an eyebrow. "You're hardly in a position to bargain." "Hear me out. You said Webb is influential. That means he's rich. And rich men like things that make them richer." She met his eyes. "I know where there's money, a lot of money, hidden on Sam's property. He never told anyone about it, but I found it." The lie came easily. Desperation made her creative. "How much money?" "Thousands. Gold coins, buried under the barn." Ellie watched his expression shift, greed flickering beneath the professional mask. "I can show you where, but only if you let my daughter go." "Why would you do that?" "Because she's innocent. She's just a baby. Whatever happens to me, she deserves a chance." Ellie forced tears into her eyes. It wasn't hard. "Please, let me give her that chance. Then I'll show you the gold, and you can take me wherever you want." Price studied her for a long moment. "You're lying." "I'm not. Ask yourself, why would a man with nothing spend $400 on a stranger because he could afford to lose it? Because he had more, much more." The greed was winning. She could see it in his eyes. "Even if there is gold, Mr. Webb still wants you delivered. He'll get me after you get the gold, and you can keep it all. Webb never has to know." Price was silent, calculating. "You'll show me exactly where?" "Yes." "And if you're lying?" "Then you kill me and deliver my body to Webb. He gets his satisfaction either way." The wagon continued to roll. Every second took her further from Sam, from Rosie, from any chance of rescue. But if she could just get Price to turn around to go back to the ranch, maybe she could find a way. Maybe she could buy time. "Very well," Price finally said. "We'll go back, but if this is a trick, you'll regret it." "It's not a trick. I just want my daughter to be safe." Price called out to the driver, and the wagon lurched to a stop. Commands were shouted. After a few minutes, they were moving again back the way they'd come. Ellie closed her eyes and prayed she hadn't just made a terrible mistake. They arrived at the ranch as the sun was setting. The cabin looked empty, deserted. No smoke from the chimney, no light in the windows. Ellie's heart clenched. "Where's the gold?" Price demanded, dragging her down from the wagon. "In the barn, under the third stall." He pushed her toward the barn, two of his men following. The others stayed outside watching the property. Inside the barn, the horses shifted nervously. Ellie scanned the shadows looking for anything she could use. "Show me," Price said. She led him to the third stall, her mind racing. There was nothing there. No gold, no secret, nothing but dirt and straw. But she'd seen Sam hide something under the floorboards once. A box. She hadn't known what was in it, but it had been heavy. "Here." She pointed to the corner. "You have to lift the boards." Price gestured to his men. They started prying up the wooden planks. And then everything happened at once. A shot rang out from somewhere above. One of the men fell. Price spun, drawing his weapon, but before he could fire, a figure dropped from the hayloft and tackled him to the ground. Sam. Ellie screamed his name as he and Price struggled for the gun. More shots from outside. Shouts. The sound of horses. "Run!" Sam yelled at her. "Get out of here!" But Ellie didn't run. She grabbed a pitchfork from the wall and swung it at the remaining guard, catching him across the face. He went down with a howl. The gun went off. Ellie's heart stopped. Then Sam was standing over Price's prone form, the weapon in his hand, his face bloody but fierce. "You okay?" he gasped. "I thought they arrested you." "They tried." He grabbed her hand. "We need to go. Now." They burst out of the barn into chaos. More men were arriving on horseback, but they weren't Price's men. These were townspeople led by a tall black man Ellie recognized as the doctor who'd treated her the week before. "Thornton!" the doctor shouted. "We got word. Came as fast as we could." "Whitfield." Sam's voice was raw with relief. "Thank God." "Where are the children?" Ellie's heart lurched. "Rosie. Where's Rosie?" "I'm here, Mama." The small voice came from the corner of the cabin. Rosie emerged from the shadows, hope clutched in her arms, both children dirty and tear-streaked, but alive. Ellie dropped to her knees and gathered them both in her arms, sobbing. "I hid," Rosie whispered. "Like you told me. I hid until the bad men left. Then I waited. You brave girl. My brave, brave girl." Sam knelt beside them, his hand on Ellie's back. "Is it over?" Rosie asked. Ellie looked at Sam, at the chaos around them, at the men being rounded up by Dr. Whitfield and the townspeople. "Not yet," Sam said honestly. "But we're together. That's what matters." Dr. Whitfield approached, his expression grim, but hopeful. "We've got Price and most of his men. Sheriff's been arrested too. Turns out he was on Webb's payroll." He looked at Sam. "The judge is going to have some questions to answer as well. This whole operation was corrupt from the start. And Webb. He's running. Got word we were coming and took off, but we'll find him." Sam nodded, his jaw tight. "Sam." Ellie touched his arm. "You're hurt." He looked down at himself as if just remembering. Blood seeped from a wound on his side, staining his shirt dark. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing." Dr. Whitfield moved closer. "Let me look at that. After." Sam pulled Ellie and the children closer. "After I know they're safe." "We're safe," Ellie said. "Because of you. Again. Because of all of us." Sam looked at Rosie. "You were so brave, little one. So brave." Rosie leaned against him, exhausted but no longer afraid. "Papa Sam saved us," she said simply. "Papa Sam had help." He met Ellie's eyes. "Your mama saved us too. Convinced Price to come back here. Bought us time." "The gold," Price croaked from where he lay on the ground, hands bound. "She said there was gold." "There's no gold," Ellie said. "I lied." "You what?" "I lied to save my children. I'd do it again." Price's face twisted with rage, but Dr. Whitfield silenced him with a look. "Get him out of here," the doctor ordered. "And get Thornton inside. That wound needs attention." The next hours blurred together in a haze of activity. Dr. Whitfield treated Sam's wound, a graze that looked worse than it was. The townspeople cleaned up the aftermath, taking statements, securing prisoners. Clara Jenkins from the general store arrived with food and blankets, clucking over the children like a mother hen. By midnight, the ranch was quiet again. The children were asleep. Sam was bandaged and resting, and Ellie sat at the table too, wired to sleep. You should rest. Sam's voice came from the bed. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see them taking you away. But they didn't. I'm right here. This time. Ellie felt tears threatening again. But what about next time? What happens when Webb sends someone else? Or when the new judge decides you're guilty after all? What happens when? Ellie. She looked at him, at his pale face and bandaged side, at the man who'd nearly died for her. Come here, he said. She crossed to the bed and sat on the edge. Sam took her hand. I'm not going anywhere, he said, and neither are you. Webb is finished. The judge is finished. Dr. Whitfield and the others, they're good people. They won't let this happen again. You can't know that. No. But I can choose to believe it. He squeezed her hand. That's what you taught me, you know. To believe in something again. To hope. I taught you that. You and Hope and Rosie. This family we're building. His eyes held hers. I love you, Ellie. I know it's too soon to say it. I know you've been through too much. But I need you to know. Whatever happens, I love you. Ellie's breath caught. Sam. You don't have to say it back. I just needed you to hear it. She looked at this man, this quiet, stubborn, impossibly kind man who'd given her everything and asked for nothing. I love you too, she whispered. His eyes widened. You don't have to. I'm not saying it because I have to. I'm saying it because it's true. She leaned down and pressed her lips to his gentle, mindful of his injury. I love you, Samuel Thornton, and I'm staying, for good, if you'll have me. If I'll have you. His voice was rough with emotion. Ellie, I'd give everything I own for you. I'd burn the world down for you. I don't need you to burn the world. I just need you to stay. Then I'll stay. He pulled her closer, ignoring the twinge in his side. Forever. I promise. They held each other as the fire burned low and the night deepened. And for the first time since the nightmare had begun, Ellie felt truly, completely safe. Not because the danger was gone, not because everything was perfect, but because she wasn't alone anymore. She had Sam. She had Hope. She had Rosie. She had a family. And she would fight to keep them. No matter what came next, no matter what it cost. Because that was what love meant. That was what freedom meant. Not the absence of chains, but the presence of people worth fighting for. Spring came slowly to the Texas hills, melting the snow in patches, coaxing green shoots through the frozen earth. But inside the cabin, the warmth had already arrived. Sam's wound healed faster than Dr. Whitfield expected, though he still moved carefully, and Ellie still watched him with worried eyes every time he lifted something heavy. The children settled into a routine that felt more like normalcy every day. Hope was crawling now, pulling herself across the floor with determined focus, her giggles filling the cabin with music. Rosie had stopped flinching at loud noises, stopped looking over her shoulder, stopped waiting for the next terrible thing, and Ellie had stopped running. Not physically, she'd never actually tried to leave, but mentally, emotionally, she'd spent her first weeks at the ranch with one foot out the door, ready to flee at the first sign of danger. Now, she walked through the cabin like it belonged to her, touched the walls like they were hers, looked at Sam like he was home. Because he was. You're staring again, Sam said one morning, catching her watching him over breakfast. I like looking at you. I'm nothing special to look at. You're wrong, Ellie smiled. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Sam's ears went red the way they always did when she said something tender. Even after everything, he still wasn't used to being loved. Mama. Rosie tugged at her sleeve. Can we visit Rosemary today? Papa Sam said I could feed her apples. If Papa Sam said so, then yes. Papa Sam says a lot of things. Sam muttered, but he was smiling. Finish your breakfast first. Rosie stuffed the rest of her biscuit into her mouth with enthusiasm, cheeks bulging like a chipmunk. Slow down, Ellie laughed. The horse isn't going anywhere. But I want to see her now. Patience, little one. Sam reached over and wiped crumbs from her chin. Good things come to those who wait. That's what you always say. Because it's true. Ellie watched them together, this man and this child, who'd both been so broken when they first met. Rosie had transformed under Sam's patient care, blooming from a terrified shadow into a spirited little girl who laughed and played and trusted. And Sam had transformed too, though more quietly. The haunted look in his eyes had softened. The rigid set of his shoulders had relaxed. He smiled now, really smiled in ways that made Ellie's heart skip. They'd built something here, something real and lasting and good. But there was still one thing missing. Sam, Ellie said that evening after the children were asleep, we need to talk. He looked up from the harness he was mending, instantly alert. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, there's something I've been thinking about. Tell me. She sat across from him at the table, gathering her courage. We've been living as a family for months now, you, me, Rosie, Hope, but we've never made it official, never made it legal. Sam set down the harness. You mean marriage? I mean everything. Marriage, adoption, making Rosie legally our daughter, making Hope legally yours. She met his eyes. I want us to be a family in every way, not just in how we feel, but in how the world sees us. Ellie, you know I want that too. But after everything that happened, I wasn't sure if you. If I what? If you'd want to be tied to anyone again. Even me. His voice was quiet. Marriage is a contract, and you've had bad experiences with contracts. This is different. How? Ellie reached across the table and took his hands. Because I'm choosing it. Nobody's forcing me. Nobody's selling me. I'm standing here free, and I'm choosing you. She squeezed his fingers. That's what makes it different. That's what makes it matter. Sam stared at her for a long moment. Then he stood abruptly and crossed to the loose floorboard in the corner, the one where he kept his savings. What are you doing? He pulled out a small box she'd never seen before and brought it back to the table. His hands were shaking slightly as he opened it. Inside was a ring, simple silver, worn smooth with age, with a tiny blue stone that caught the lamplight. It was my mother's, Sam said. She gave it to me before she died. Told me to give it to the woman I wanted to spend my life with. He looked at Ellie. I gave it to Ruth on our wedding day. After she died, I put it back in this box. Thought I'd never take it out again. Ellie's breath caught. Sam. But then you came, you and Hope and Rosie, and suddenly this cabin wasn't empty anymore. Suddenly I had a reason to get up in the morning. Suddenly I had something worth living for. He took the ring from the box. Eleanor Callahan, I love you. I love your daughter. I love the little girl who calls me Papa. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down Ellie's face. Yes. The word came out choked. Yes, Sam. 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, thoroughly, the way he'd been too careful to kiss her before. She melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, her heart so full she thought it might burst. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Sam rested his forehead against hers. Tomorrow, he said. We'll ride into town tomorrow, find the preacher, make it official. What about Rosie, Hope? We'll bring them. They're part of this. He smiled. Besides, Rosie's been asking when we're going to have a real wedding. I think she wants to throw flowers. Ellie laughed through her tears. Of course she does. So tomorrow. Tomorrow, she agreed. Tomorrow we become a family. The ride into town felt different this time. Ellie had made this journey before, terrified and silent, waiting for someone to recognize her, to drag her back to captivity. But today she sat beside Sam, with her head held high, Hope in her lap, Rosie wedged between them, chattering about flowers and dresses and cake. "Will there be cake, Mama? At weddings there's supposed to be cake." "I don't know, sweetheart. We'll see. Mrs. Jenkins makes good cake. I had some when we went to the store last time." "Then maybe Mrs. Jenkins will make us one." Can I ask her? Can I ask her right now when we get there?" "We'll see." Sam caught Ellie's eye and smiled. This was their life now. Endless questions from a curious 4-year-old, sticky fingers and muddy boots and laughter that filled every corner of the cabin. It was chaotic and exhausting and absolutely perfect. The town was busier than Ellie remembered. People moved along the wooden sidewalks going about their daily business. A few looked up as their wagon passed recognition flickering in their eyes. "That's Thornton," someone murmured. "And the woman he bought at auction." Ellie stiffened, but Sam's hand found hers. "Let them talk," he said quietly. "Their words can't hurt us." He was right. She knew he was right, but the old fear was hard to shake. They stopped first at the general store, where Clara Jenkins greeted them with genuine warmth. "Well, look at you 3. 4, I should say." She smiled at Hope, who was grabbing at everything within reach. "What brings you to town?" "We're getting married," Rosie announced before anyone else could speak. "And I'm going to throw flowers. And there's going to be cake, right, Mrs. Jenkins? You'll make us cake." Clara laughed. "Is that so? Well, I suppose I could manage a cake. When's the wedding?" "Today," Sam said. "If the preacher's available." "Today?" Clara's eyebrows rose. "Well, you don't waste time, do you?" She looked at Ellie with knowing eyes. "Can't say I blame you. After everything that's happened, I'd want it settled too." "You know about what happened." "The whole town knows. Dr. Whitfield made sure of it." Clara leaned closer. "Webb's finished, dear. His reputation's ruined. The judge he bought has been removed. And the territorial governor himself is looking into how many other women were illegally sold in this county." She patted Ellie's hand. "You're not just getting married. You're getting justice." Ellie felt something loosen in her chest. She'd known Webb had been exposed, but hearing it confirmed, knowing the whole town knew that was different. "Thank you," she whispered, "for telling me. Thank me by being happy." Clara shooed them toward the door. "Now go find that preacher. I'll have a cake ready by this afternoon." The preacher was a kind-faced man named Reverend Thomas, who agreed to perform the ceremony without hesitation. "I've heard about you, Mrs. Callahan," he said as they stood in his small office. "About what you've endured. About what Mr. Thornton did for you." He smiled. "It would be my honor to marry you." "Can I throw flowers?" Rosie asked, tugging at his sleeve. "I don't see why not. Do you have flowers?" Rosie's face fell. "No." "Then we'll pick some." The Reverend winked at her. "There's a meadow behind the church. Plenty of wildflowers this time of year." They spent the next hour preparing. Rosie gathered an armful of yellow and purple wildflowers, while Sam helped Ellie arrange her hair. She was wearing the blue dress he'd bought her fabric for months ago, the one she'd sewn by lamplight, the one that made her feel beautiful. "You're stunning." Sam said, his voice rough. "You're biased." "Doesn't make it less true." Dr. Whitfield arrived just as they were about to begin, having heard about the wedding from Clara. He stood as their witness, his presence a reminder of how much had changed since that terrible night when men had come to take Ellie away. "Ready?" Reverend Thomas asked. Ellie looked at Sam, at Rosie bouncing excitedly with her flowers, at Hope gurgling in the carrier Dr. Whitfield was holding. "Ready," she said. They stood before the altar in the small church, just the 6 of them. No crowd, no fanfare. Just a family, becoming official. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Thomas began, "we are gathered here to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." Ellie barely heard the words. She was too focused on Sam's face, on the way he looked at her, like she was the most precious thing in the world. On the way, his hands trembled slightly as he held hers. On the way, his eyes glistened with tears he refused to shed. Do you, Samuel James Thornton, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health until death do you part? I do. Sam's voice was steady. And do you, Eleanor Marie Callahan, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Ellie thought of everything that had brought her to this moment. The auction, the chains, the years of suffering. And then Sam appearing out of nowhere, buying her freedom, giving her a home, teaching her what it meant to be loved. I do, she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Reverend Thomas smiled. You may kiss the bride. Sam pulled her close and kissed her soft and sweet and full of promise. Rosie cheered and threw her flowers into the air, showering them with petals. Hope laughed and clapped her hands. Dr. Whitfield wiped his eyes. I love you, Mrs. Thornton. Sam murmured against her lips. I love you too, Mr. Thornton. They walked out of the church into the spring sunshine, married and official and absolutely sure. Clara was waiting with her promised cake, and other townspeople had gathered, drawn by word of the ceremony. Congratulations, they called. God bless you. Best wishes. Ellie accepted their well wishes with grace, though part of her still expected someone to object, to say she didn't deserve happiness to try to take it away. But no one did. These people, this community, they were welcoming her, accepting her, seeing her as a person, not property. Thank you, she said to each of them. Thank you for everything. There was one more thing to do. After the cake was eaten and the congratulations accepted, Sam found the county clerk and filed the paperwork to legally adopt Rosie and to have Hope's birth certificate amended to show both their names as parents. There, he said, handing Ellie the documents. Now it's official. Rosie Thornton, Hope Thornton, our daughters in every way that matters. Rosie, who had been listening, looked up with wide eyes. I'm really Rosie Thornton now. Really and truly. And you're really my papa forever. Forever. Sam knelt down and opened his arms. Come here, little one. Rosie threw herself at him, wrapping her small arms around his neck. I always wanted a real papa, she whispered. One who doesn't hurt. I will never hurt you. Sam's voice was fierce. Never. I promise. I know. Rosie pulled back and smiled. You're the best papa in the whole world. Ellie watched them, her heart so full it hurt. This was her family. This man, these children, this life they'd built together. It was more than she'd ever dared to dream. Mama, Rosie called. Group hug. Always. She joined them, wrapping her arms around Sam and Rosie, while Hope babbled happily from Dr. Whitfield's arms nearby. They stood there in the middle of the street, a family forged not by blood, but by choice, and let the world see. Let them see what love looked like. Let them see what freedom meant. The ride home felt like the beginning of something new. Rosie fell asleep against Sam's shoulder, exhausted from the excitement. Hope dozed in Ellie's arms, her small fist curled around Ellie's finger. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Wife, Sam said softly. Ellie smiled. Husband. I like the sound of that. Me too. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, watching the landscape pass. Sam, Ellie said eventually. Thank you. For what? For everything. For buying my freedom. For giving me a home. For loving me when I couldn't love myself. She leaned her head against his shoulder. For giving me a reason to hope. You gave me the same thing. He kissed the top of her head. Before you came, I was just existing, going through the motions, waiting to die. His voice caught. You brought me back to life, Ellie. You and these girls. We saved each other. Yeah. He smiled. I guess we did. The cabin came into view, smoke rising from the chimney, where Sam had banked the fire before they left. It looked small and humble, nothing special, but to Ellie, it was everything. "Home," she said. "Home." Sam agreed. He helped her down from the wagon, careful not to wake the sleeping children. They carried the girls inside and settled them in bed, then stood watching them sleep for a long moment. "I never thought I'd have this," Ellie whispered. "A family, a home, a husband who loves me. I never thought I'd have it again." Sam put his arm around her. "After Ruth, I closed off that part of myself. Thought it was safer to be alone. And now I can't imagine being alone again." He turned her to face him. "You changed everything, Ellie. You and your fierce heart and your stubborn hope. You made me believe in something again." "What do you believe in?" "This." He gestured around them. "Us. Our family. The life we're building." He cupped her face in his hands. "I believe in second chances. I believe in redemption. I believe that broken things can be made whole again." Ellie felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I believe it too," she whispered. "For the first time in my life, I really believe it." They went to bed that night as husband and wife wrapped in each other's arms, listening to the peaceful sounds of their children sleeping. Outside, the spring wind rustled through the pines. Inside, everything was warm and safe and full of love. Ellie lay awake for a while, thinking about everything that had happened. The auction where her life had been sold for $300. The man who'd paid that price and asked for nothing. The children who'd found their way to her. The community that had rallied to protect them. She thought about who she'd been a year ago. Broken. Hopeless. Convinced that she'd never be anything more than property. And she thought about who she was now. A wife. A mother. A woman who'd chosen her own path and built her own future. The transformation felt impossible. Miraculous. Like grace. "You're thinking too loud," Sam murmured sleepily. "Sorry." "Don't be." He pulled her closer. "What's on your mind?" "I was thinking about how different everything is now. How different I am." "You're still you." "But a better version." Ellie traced patterns on his chest. "A freer version." "Freedom looks good on you." She smiled in the darkness. "It feels good too." They fell asleep tangled together, hearts beating in sync, breathing the same air. And when morning came, they woke to Rosie bouncing on the bed and Hope crying for breakfast and the beautiful chaos of family life. "Mama. Papa, wake up, the sun's out and Rosemary is waiting and I want to help make breakfast and can we have pancakes, please?" Sam groaned and pulled the pillow over his head. Ellie laughed and scooped Rosie into her arms. "Pancakes it is, but you have to help mix the batter." "I'm the best mixer," Rosie declared. "The best mixer in the whole world." Ellie agreed. She carried Rosie to the kitchen while Sam stumbled after them, still half asleep, to get Hope from her cradle. They moved around each other with the ease of long practice, a family dance they'd perfected over months of shared mornings. Pancakes were made, batter was spilled. Rosie got flour in her hair, and Hope threw her food on the floor with gleeful abandon. It was messy and loud and absolutely perfect. After breakfast, while Sam took Rosie to feed the horses, Ellie sat at the table with her journal. March 15th, she wrote, "Today I woke up as Eleanor Thornton, wife, mother, free woman. 1 year ago I was property. I had no name that mattered, no future that was mine, no hope that things would ever change. And now everything has changed. I have a husband who loves me, who sees me, who chose me when he could have walked away. I have daughters who call me mama, who trust me to keep them safe, who teach me every day what joy looks like. I have a home that's mine because I chose it, not because I was sold to it. I used to think freedom was just the absence of chains. But I was wrong. Freedom is having someone to love and being loved in return. Freedom is choosing your own path and walking it without fear. Freedom is building something beautiful out of broken pieces." She paused, looking out the window at Sam and Rosie in the paddock, watching Rosemary eat her apple. I was once priced at $300. She continued writing. Now I know my worth is beyond any price. I was once property sold and bought and traded like livestock. Now I'm a person who belongs to herself. I was once hopeless, convinced that pain was all I'd ever know. Now I'm full of hope for myself, for my family, for the future we're building together. This is my story. Not the story of what was done to me, but the story of what I chose to become. A survivor, a mother, a wife, a woman who refused to stay broken. I'm not the same person I was when Sam bought my freedom. I'm better, stronger, more whole, and I'm grateful for every single day I get to live this life. She closed the journal and pressed her hand against the cover. Outside, Rosie's laughter rang through the morning air. Hope babbled happily from her blanket on the floor. Sam caught Ellie's eye through the window and smiled that soft, rare smile that was just for her. This was her life now. Not perfect, not easy, but hers. She stood and went to the door, stepping out onto the porch to watch her family. "Mama!" Rosie waved frantically. "Rosemary let me sit on her. Did you see? Did you see?" "I saw, sweetheart. You're a natural." Sam walked over. Rosie perched on his shoulders now, both of them grinning. "She's going to be a better rider than me someday," he said. "I'm already better," Rosie declared. "Don't get cocky, little one." "What's cocky mean?" "It means too proud. Like a rooster." "I'm not a rooster. I'm a girl." "You're a troublemaker is what you are." Rosie giggled and squirmed until Sam set her down. She ran past Ellie into the cabin, probably to tell Hope all about her riding adventure, even though Hope couldn't understand a word. Sam climbed the porch steps and stopped in front of Ellie. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I ever thought possible." "Good." He kissed her softly. "That's all I ever wanted. For you to be happy." "What about you? Are you happy?" Sam looked at the cabin behind her, at the life they'd built, at the family they'd created. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I'm happy. Even though I came with complications. Because you came with complications." He smiled. "I was dead inside Ellie. Just going through the motions. You woke me up. You and Rosie and Hope. You gave me something to live for. We gave each other that." "We did." He took her hand. "And we'll keep giving it to each other. Every day. For the rest of our lives." Ellie squeezed his fingers. "Promise?" "Promise." They stood on the porch together, watching the sun climb higher, listening to Rosie's chatter inside and Hope's answering babbles. The ranch spread out before them, green and gold and beautiful. Their ranch, their home, their future. "Sam?" Ellie said. "Yeah. I used to think I'd never be anything more than what I was born into. Property, chattel, something to be used and discarded." She turned to face him fully. "But you showed me I was wrong. You showed me I could be more, that I deserved more." "You always deserved more. I just reminded you." "No." She shook her head. "You did more than remind me. You fought for me. You sacrificed for me. You loved me when I couldn't love myself." Her voice broke. "You made me believe I was worth fighting for." "You are worth fighting for." Sam's voice was fierce. "You're worth everything. So are you." She reached up and touched his face. "So is this life we've built. So are these children we're raising. Everything we have, everything we are, it's worth fighting for. And we will. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." "Together," Ellie repeated. "I like the sound of that." "Me too, Mrs. Thornton." Sam grinned. "Me too." Inside the cabin, Rosie started singing some made-up song about horses and flowers and pancakes. Hope joined in with enthusiastic babbling that might have been an attempt at harmony. It was ridiculous and beautiful and perfectly wonderfully theirs. "We should go in," Ellie said, "before Rosie teaches Hope to yodel or something." "Too late. I already caught her trying yesterday. God help us. God help us all. Sam laughed and pulled her toward the door. Come on, let's go be a family. They went inside together into the warmth and noise and beautiful chaos of home. Rosie demanded to be swung in circles. Hope demanded to be held. Sam demanded coffee. Ellie demanded kisses from all of them. It was messy. It was loud. It was everything she'd ever wanted. And as she stood in the middle of her cabin surrounded by the people she loved, Eleanor Thornton knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Not because someone had placed her there, but because she had chosen it. That was the difference between being property and being free. Property went where it was put. Free people chose their own path. And Ellie had chosen this man, this family, this life. She would never stop choosing it. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Because this was home. This was love. This was freedom. And it was hers now and forever, bought not with money, but with trust, not with chains, but with choice, not with desperation, but with hope. She had been sold once valued at $300, weighed and measured, and found wanting. Now she was priceless. Now she was loved. Now she was free. And that was worth more than all the gold in the world.